Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com on the 24/7 Sports Network, joined by football analyst William Gardner. William, the season is so close, you can taste it. And unfortunately, week 0 for college football wasn't much of an appetizer. Not much to really enjoy from an entertainment value, which is kind of unfortunate that Arizona State-Colorado week 0 game didn't take place. That would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that the hype and the build up to this TCU game is even better without it. I don't know, who knows? I think the extra week that this team needs to get ready for a game is good, but the way it's played out with all the hype being on this being the opener for Prime and against the team from last year that was in the playoffs and such, it's turned into such a huge game. I think it's worked out pretty well.
And I say the season is so close you can taste it also because, William, I've already figured out what barbecue spot I'm going to hit up out there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm ready to go.
And I'm looking at some of the goofy stuff coming up on the board, and I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So we have some topics to get into, and then this is going to be a pretty mailbag heavy show. I'm just curious what your thoughts were as you pound caffeine back there. You're going to be raring to go here. What were the surprises and disappointments of camp in your eyes?
I don't know that there are a lot. Obviously, the primary, the big, huge disappointment is Tyler Brown, and I think the NCAA did him wrong. And somebody out there ought to have a little bit of decency and compassion, what have you. I think that's, is it a huge loss? I think it's a pretty damn big loss to us, but I think it's even what it just really makes me sad for him because I think he's on a track to maybe play at the next level, and he needed to play this year. And now he's got to, he's got to keep working and figure it out and be ready for next year. And I think that's just too bad. So that's a huge disappointment to me. I was really looking forward to watching him and Lichtenhand on that left side push people around. So that's the single biggest disappointment, I would say. And aside from that, I don't know if there's a whole lot else that comes to mind as far as disappointments. I think I was trying to think what other kind of things were surprising to me. I think the J.J. Mitchell, the linebacker showing up out of the blue came from Tennessee and via Arizona State was kind of somewhat of a surprise last week to me, at least. Maybe it wasn't a surprise to everybody else, but I think that's a really big addition. Might not be a huge addition the first couple of weeks, but by mid-season, I think he's going to be somebody that really makes an addition for us. So I don't know. Everything else kind of played out the way we sort of thought it would, I guess. What do you think?
In terms of surprises, I feel like this team's pass rush going into camp, you thought it was going to be improved, right? They were dead last in the country last year in terms of getting after the quarterback, but didn't know, was this going to just be kind of an average pass rush type defense or have a chance to be a pretty darn good one? And I think it's elevated itself with some guys stepping up there. Kyrie Mance has stepped up. You look at some of the guys like Bishop Thomas that can get a pass rush from the interior, some guys that I feel can, really create problems in opposing backfields. And so I feel better about that D-line edge group. Even Tajay McCoy, a true freshman coming in that, William, you and I were both really high on coming in here and for him to create the buzz that he has. So that's one area. Obviously, the disappointment, like you pointed out, is Tyler Brown. That NCAA just can't let common sense get in the way of a wrong decision once again. And he leaves Louisiana because a father figure that recruited him there passes away in front of him. And then he leaves Jackson State because his head coach comes to Colorado. And that's a case where it should be a slam dunk that he should be able to play right away. If, again, you're letting common sense rule these decisions.
Yeah, and I always felt like if you changed levels, like you went from the Jackson State level up to CU, or if you went from CU down, you ought to be able to play automatically either way. Because if you go down a level, it's like, well, I don't know, you're moving down and you're at a lower level. You ought not to be penalized for that. And if you're moving up and you're going to take a chance at playing against a higher level of competition, you ought not to be penalized for that too. Seems to me that well, first of all, it's the same thing we've been saying for 50 years. A coach can leave whenever he damn well pleases. There's no penalty whatsoever, but a kid leaves and he gets penalized a season. It's ridiculous and stupid. It's why we end up with things like NIL and whatever, because they can't make a common sense decision that makes any sense. So it gets taken into other hands. So, at the end of the day, NCAA going to get a stake driven through its heart at some point, because this is the kind of stupid crap they do every year. But
that's a great point, though, because JUCO players can transfer into a 4-year institution and play right away. And some of those JUCOs play football that's pretty on, quality with some of the FCS stuff out there. So that doesn't make any sense, that there would be a difference in terms of eligibility between those two levels jumping up to Power 5.
Right. Going back to the pass rush thing, Taj McCoy was a guy that's jumped out to me in the summer from the videos going against, saw one rep going against Tank and looking pretty good. And you could clearly see that burst and that quickness. So that one doesn't surprise me so much. The other side of what you're saying, though, is they're going against our offensive line. What do we take from that? Do we have a problem on offensive line? I don't really think so, but you never can tell so much when you're in camp and you're going against each other, or when we go against a good okay, see, now I almost said it again, when you go against a good offensive line, but I think we're going to have a good offensive line. It's always hard for me to know exactly what to take from camp when we're going against ourselves.
It's a good point. Even Sean Lewis said, when I asked him about this offensive line, he said, it's wait and see. We got to see what it looks like on game day, because it's one thing to base your assumptions, like you said, off the practice field, another thing when you're going up against somebody else. So this is always the point of the preseason, where we've talked every position to death, and it is time to see them match up against somebody else. But I would be surprised if the pass rush is not pretty solid for Colorado this year. It's great that Tajay McCoy, as a breakout freshman, isn't a guy that you project in the starting lineup or that's going to have a huge role. You just kind of get excited about his potential for a few plays this year and for the future. And so that goes to show you, I didn't even mention Arden Walker, another guy, a feel-good story coming back here to Colorado that's made quite a few plays off the edge. We knew Derek McClendon, the second, was going to be a good player there as well. And Jordan Dominic, obviously, Shane Koch. So there's so many guys that can, rack up somewhere between 3 and 8 sacks probably, that I think they're going to have a good pass rush as a team.
And it wouldn't shock me if one of them hit 10 or, 11. When you've got more guys that can, and it may seem contrary to common sense, but when you have more guys that can rush the passer, it's easier for one guy to get more sacks, because they're trying to, scheme to stop everybody. But, and it's interesting to me, we're kind of seeing how this defense is developing. And it's interesting to me that there seems to be looking at probably like more often not a nickel situation, but McClendon with more of a hand on the ground, almost like a lineman situation. And he seems to be doing pretty well with that, which gives you the opportunity to stand up a couple of guys on the edge and really get after people. So
I did my starting lineup predictions on BuffStampede.com on Saturday. I ended up having to make a change there, just one, and putting Landon Beebe in the starting offensive line group, because he was with the first team on their scrimmage on Saturday. So I made one tweak there. Did you happen to get a chance to look at that? Any thoughts in terms of what my predictions are, and maybe where you would veer away from that?
If you want to go kind of through positions, or did you
not necessarily. Was there anything that you disagreed with in there?
Let me pull it back up. I mean, I don't, I think that people are making a big deal out of Beebe and Bailey and Wiltie. I think my opinion, Wiltie's the better of the three. But I wouldn't say there's a huge difference between them. It would surprise me to some extent if Bailey was the starter, quite frankly. I think, although it wouldn't, because he's also been with O'Boyle for 3 years, and O'Boyle knows what he has there, and he knows the offense. But then Beebe's just a thicker, bigger, a little bit more physical guy. So that could go either way. It wouldn't be a drop off or a loss either way. I do think they're both somewhat of a step down from Tyler Brown, but I think they're both going to be very solid at a guard spot. So who starts a week from Well, a week from yesterday in Dallas, I don't know. Just because Baby started yesterday doesn't mean he starts on Saturday. So we'll see. So I think that one's interesting. And then I think you're kind of off the wall there with the quarterback prediction. That Sanders guy, you think he's starting?
I was
I
like,
think
the only commentary I could put in here is, okay, what are the single season records at Colorado? Because that's where the discussion is at the quarterback position entering this 2023 season.
right. And the running back choice is interesting because I guess I sort of see Dylan Edwards as I'm not a practice. I don't know how they're running the offense. If they have a starting running back, or he seems to me like a guy that you stick in there at different situations to put him in mismatched situations. So maybe Hank might. I don't know if it makes a difference. Quite frankly, who's the starter or running back, because you're going to bounce them in at different situations for different reasons anyway. So maybe you might be the guy that gets the first play of the game. Do you get the most plays of the game, most carries? Who knows? I don't know that it really matters all that much. And then,
well, hopefully Coach Flea kind of rides that hot hand, right? I think is
right.
a strategy you want to go with having so much depth at that position. If a guy, obviously you're not going to wear them out, but if a guy clearly has it that day, then he becomes that feature back for that Saturday.
Right. You keep going with the guy that's making the big plays and what have you, and if a guy's hot, and then you take him out when you need to take him out, but I don't know. I'm looking back through everything here, and I mean, there's really nothing controversial about any of your picks, to be honest with you. They're all pretty reasonable, and we'll see what happens. I think we have some real depth at some of these positions for once. It's like we're talking about a pass rush, and I almost feel like, as a CU fan, hey, board, let me explain what a pass rush is, because you haven't seen one in so long. So that would be such a change and such a difference in this team. I think that that's exciting, and I also think that it's not like 20 years ago when an offense and a defense did this, and that was what they do. Now things, you're in the nickel, you're in a dime, you're spread, you got a tailback, maybe you got no back. And so the offenses and the defenses are changing up what they're doing so much, really, from series to series, that who's starting and who's not. The only place where starters, I think, end up being the same guys that play most of the plays is offensive line.
Oh, how concerned on a scale of 1 to 10 are you about the lack of depth at offensive tackle? Because I came into camp worried about the defensive line depth, and to me, with some of those guys stepping up, Derek McLennan, working his way with Sinceri's group primarily, I actually think that they're going to be okay there probably. But if something happens to Tank or Savion Washington, you're going to have to play a guy out of position, most likely at tackle.
Yeah, I think probably. I don't know what I am very confident that Bill O'Boyle is working on this and has a plan, and is working guys to get them better. Your most obvious guy you'd like to see have it all click together is Isaiah Jota, and there's a couple of those other Reggie Young, maybe, I don't know, but I think if somebody went down today, you probably slide Wilty out to right tackle and move Washington to left tackle. It'd be my first thought, but I'm not out there watching him every day to see who has what skills and what have you. But Wilty does have the size and the length, and he's played out there. I don't think, somebody mentioned Beebe. He's just too squatty and short to play at tackle. He just gets swum because he's just not tall enough and long enough. But it's a concern, but I don't know, you look at it in a variety of different ways. I mean, if we're sitting here talking, we're hoping to have a 10-win season, it'd be a huge concern. But, look at how many seasons in the last 5 or 6, 10 years, we weren't sure we had 2 tackles to begin with, starters, and look how bad our tackles have been the last few years. Although both of them look like they're going to be starting at P5 this year. I think that had to do with coaching and scheme or whatever. But, I don't know, knock on wood, tackle's not a position where guys go down a whole lot, it seems like, in my recollection. So we'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. And Bill O'Boyle's just got to keep working to develop those guys and have a plan, to fix it. I mean, that's the nature of football, really, is you got to have somebody to be able to step in there and come up with a plan to make it better. I also go back to the fact that this offense is offensive line friendly. And I don't know that people really understand that. If I could sit down and show film and X's and O's on the board, I could explain that to people. But there are offenses that are offensive line friendly, and then there's what we've had for 10 years, which is not wide receiver friendly or quarterback friendly or anything friendly. I don't know what the hell it was friendly to. It's friendly to the defense, I suppose. But I don't know. Is it a concern? We'll see. Fingers crossed. If Washington and Tank make it through the season, it's not unprecedented for both tackles to make it through the season. I'm thinking back to 2016, and I recall, I can't remember, there was Shane Callahan and there was other kid on the inside who really saved our bacon, but it was at guard and center, and we didn't really have any troubles with the tackles that year. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, they even rotated Aaron Hagler in that year as a third tackle. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think would I like more depth? Well, sure, yeah. I'd like to have 4 future NFL draft picks at tackle on our team. A couple sophomores and a couple seniors every single year. Let's do it that way. Everybody on board with that? But we don't have that. We got to, as an offensive line coach, especially at lower levels than Power 5, it was always a you were always trying to find 5 guys, and God forbid a guy got hurt. You're always trying to think about who's my next guy up if somebody goes down, and I'm going to take this guy and he's going to go over there and put a guy in, and it's no other position coach really has to deal with so many positions at the same time, and they all have to work together. Like, you may have 4 wide receivers out there, but they don't all have to work together. They got to, kind of do different things. And you always have to be ready. Most seasons you're just trying to find 5 guys that are starters, and, a top backup is a luxury at most levels, but we'll just have to cross our fingers and hope for the best. But yeah, it's a legit concern.
Let's jump into our perceived strengths and weaknesses for this team as we get close to the opener. Strengths, you got to start with Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, a smart, accurate, athletic when he needs to be quarterback, and that combination we haven't had at that position in Boulder in quite some time.
Let me ask you this. I've been seeing a lot of this chirping about
are you pounding more caffeine over there, by the way?
No, this is protein now. So
okay.
All right. A little bit of caffeine, a little bit of protein, got to get my liquid nutrition in. We had a wedding on Friday. It's been a tough, a little bit tiring, wearing out a couple of days. So
hey, you do whatever you need to do over there. Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to get William on speed here by the end of.
Well, let me reach down in the lower desk drawer and get the bourbon out. We'll get ready to roll.
All right. Like I said, you do whatever you need to do.
But I think, I've seen a little bit of this chirping about, it's going to be different at the Power 5 level. And can he handle this? And I'm wondering your thoughts on that. I mean, I will never sit here and pretend to be a quarterback expert. But I do think he's pretty special.
Well, I think there's going to be a couple throws in there where he goes, okay, yeah, that I could get away with that before, I can't now. But the first thing I said about Shedeur Sanders was how smart he is as a quarterback, and he's going to pick up on that really quick. And when you got guys like Travis Hunter and Xavier Weaver that are elite 50-50 ball guys, they're going to come down with that. And so he'll take his calculated risks. But I think, again, another strength is just explosiveness at that receiver position, and guys that can come down when you take that risk with the ball.
Don't you think also, I mean, when you're facing a Travis Hunter in practice every day, you don't have a lot of margin for error against some of the guys we've got in our secondary now. So it's not like he's going in blind, like he's not seeing it.
That's true. Yeah. He's gotten those practice reps against elite Power 5 corners. So yeah. Yeah.
And I think, again, like I talked about, I guess I'm in a little happy mood today, but explaining to the board what a pass rush is, I feel like we need to explain to them good quarterback play. Here's what good quarterback play means, because you ain't seen it and what a difference it makes. In 2016, I would say we had uh, we had a smart offense that used the strengths of that quarterback, but that wasn't necessarily a quarterback centric offense, except when we would put it on his shoulders and run behind him on the sneaks and what have you. But to have a quarterback who can really pick apart a defense, and with the weapons we've got here, we're talking about strengths and weaknesses of this team. This team has a lot of strengths from my perspective, and I mean, wide receiver, if there's 10 better wide receiver groups in the country, I'd be surprised than what we got, you know. And so you combine that with a good quarterback and get the offensive line going, and then what we have at running back is a strength. Um, hopefully the offensive line is at least not a liability, but uh, there are a lot of strengths. I think this offense is going to move the ball and score a lot of points and be pretty exciting to watch,
In
especially
terms
in
of weaknesses, the first thing that comes to my mind is just run defense in general. I'm not sure that's going to be the strength of this. You got a guy like Vonta Bentley that can be a good run stuffer, but just in general, again, going back to an earlier point you made of this team going against each other, there's been a lot of explosive plays by the running backs. And yeah, there's a lot of talent at running back, but when Dylan Edwards is breaking loose that many times, you do wonder about, okay, how good is this run defense going to be?
well, yeah, and you can't answer it because maybe Dylan Edwards really is that guy, you know, and let's see if he does it for 3 or 4 times against TCU, which I'll be perfectly honest, they're not going to be a defensive juggernaut by any means. They weren't last year, and they're certainly not going to be this year with everything they lost to the NFL. But so yeah, I think we'll see. You know, we'll see. I think we got some good linemen and some good linebackers, and it'll be really kind of up to Kelly to scheme it in such a way. But I've heard all the right things about run fits and getting the right gap and all that kind of stuff. And I hear, for example, Sal Sinceri, who's rapidly becoming my favorite coach ever, really pound it. You got to have a run fit, and he's not just talking about being in the right gap. He's talking about having a hand in the right place and a shoulder in the right place and doing all the right things. And so you got coaches that are pushing that, and you got some linebackers. I think we got some pretty decent linebackers and some good speed. So I don't know, yeah. Again, is because our running backs are pretty darn good, or maybe our offensive line is good. I don't know, but there's some guys. I'd tell you this: Bishop Thomas is going to be a star. Um, don't know how long it's going to take. Might be right from the start, but he and Shane Cokes are going to be a potent team in there, I think.
You have any other thoughts on in terms of weaknesses, strengths for this team?
Well, everybody's talked about it, and I think it's true that depth may be an issue. We don't have the number of scholarships. I don't know that the number of scholarships is necessarily the thing automatically. When you have 85 scholarships, a third of them are probably guys that are not going to be able to play ready.
They've had less depth with 85 scholarship players than they do right now. Yeah.
Right. And all these guys, it's like almost everybody on the roster. There's a couple, the big offensive tackle from Florida can't play, obviously, with the pec tear, but I think he's going to be a good one down the road. But almost all these guys they brought in are guys that have been around and played a little bit of football at the college level. So there's guys you can turn to, and sometimes you don't know whether you got depth until you need to. Like, I don't even want to say it, but let's say something happens and we throw Jada in at one of those tackles. Maybe he gets the job done. I don't know. I mean, hell, the guy had talent. There's a reason we brought him here in the first place. And sometimes a guy doesn't step it up until um, it's just like in the military. The American military works because the next guy up does the damn job. Somebody goes down, and when you talk about injuries and what have you in the military, you're talking about a much different thing. And the next guy up needs to be able to step in, and that's been the greatness of the American military is that the next guy up knows how to do the first guy's job. And I do believe that whoever we put on the field will know how to do their job. Will they have the physical and athletic ability to do it? We'll find out when the time comes. But uh, yeah, I don't know. I think depth is. I'm not sure I would go so far as to call it a weakness. It's not a strength. So that's one thing. Tight end is an interesting thing. It's like we don't have any. Well, we don't really have a tight end right now that's a real Power Five tight end that would have got a scholarship anywhere. But then it's not a position we use a lot in the offense, and they're figuring it out and they're working around it.
In Caleb Fourier will be once
Will be right.
if not. I mean, he deserves some good luck in terms of that injury bug. That's been kind of ridiculous what he's had to deal with since coming here. You suggested this, William. So I'm gonna. Did you have one other thought there?
Yeah, it occurred to me something. Actually, we missed the boat on this a second ago because there is one really big, obvious, glaring strength in big neon letters, and I'm gonna use the word neon for a reason. The strength of this team is this coaching staff, and everybody who doesn't see it doesn't know football, doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. This coaching staff is going to win some games because they know what the hell they're doing, and it's both how they develop players and the dumbest saying in football is it's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. Well, that's a load of crap because if that's so great, go out and get yourself 22 NFL guys without a coach and let them go out and play and see how they do. But one of the really significant strengths of this team is going to be this coaching staff because I'm super impressed with what I've seen so far, both in terms of down into the details of teaching technique and positions, but also scheming and everything else. And so also motivation. They're just all masterful at the motivation issue. And so I really think that that's going to be a strength of this team.
I heard the notion recently that halftime adjustments are overrated. I feel like, though, having covered this football program for 20 years, that I'd say BS on that because there's been a lot of years where it's really clear the other team has a better plan coming out of the locker room, and so
last year TCU,
yeah. So if, like you said, this coaching staff is indeed a huge strength, that's going to have to be part of the formula for them to have success, is being able to it just even be on the level of the other team in terms of adjustments would be a change around here.
Right. And also, there are, certainly there are situations where you don't have enough talent that anything you do is not going to make a difference right now. I think we have to be realistic about where we are if we're going to go out and get on the field against Georgia. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. I'm going to bring this back up in a minute. But, if our opener was against Georgia, we'd all be talking a different tune. Okay. We don't have the talent to play with that team. I don't give a damn who coaches us. Right. Not now. But I've done this enough times that I've gone in at halftime and got our coaching staff together, whether I was coaching offense or defense, and said, look, here's what we're seeing in the first half. Here's what we do in the second half. And it's worked. Right. In a lot of different ways. And so it's not irrelevant. Anybody who thinks that doesn't know the game.
You posed this topic suggestion, William, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it because I don't know if I've been paying close enough attention to have much of a take, but you were looking at kind of the banter back and forth between TCU and CU fans on the message boards right now. And you posed the question, is either side delusional or is the truth somewhere in the middle? Usually things are somewhere in the middle, right? And maybe that's the case here, but I think TCU fans, from what I can gather, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm not scouring their message board every day, but it sounds like they think they're just going to steamroll Colorado, whereas Colorado fans either think it's going to be a really close game or that Colorado is going to be able to pull off this upset. Is that what you've gathered?
Yeah, that's what I've seen. And, I'm not the one, there's a couple guys on the board that keep posting stuff from the other boards, and I've stopped looking at that thread because I just don't want to see it. But what appears to me is that you've got the vast majority of, well, I don't know, maybe it's not the vast majority, maybe it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever, and it's the overconfident ones that are making all the noise. But all I'm seeing from TCU fans is, these idiotic 50 to 10 predictions or whatever. And from what I've seen, if TCU fans are not concerned about this game, they're delusional because if they're really thinking a blowout, look, it wasn't a blow. depends on how you define the term blowout, but it was a tight game going in the second half last year, and we were a crap team. We were so bad. We if there was a worse team in America than us at the Power Five level last year, I'd like to know who it was. And yet they had to, struggle and really make adjustments at half to win that game. We are, one of the things I was going to say is that earlier when we were talking about strengths and weaknesses and surprises and disappointments, is the one thing that you just have to throw in the trash is comparison to last year. What I was thinking is, you mentioned earlier, our pass rush is going to be better than last year. Well, everything's going to be better than last year. A dead elephant will be better than last year, because that team was so bad at everything. The question is, how much better are we going to be than an average team? Because I really think, the standard we're looking at is like 6-6, right? Are we a 6-6 team? Or are we better than 6-6 team? And I think we're clearly better, or we're clearly at least a 6-6 team. And anybody who doesn't see that, and all I can do is look at who's got what coming back and who lost what. And TCU had a 2016 CU season last year. They had a unicorn. Dykes walked into a situation, they lucked into a quarterback. They had ridiculous talent. The number of guys drafted off that team or getting free agent contracts was huge. Their offensive line is going to be significantly different this year. Their receivers are going to be different. They got a couple linebackers that are in the NFL now, and there is no way they're not Oklahoma or Georgia or Alabama. They are not or replace all those kind of guys kind of program. They might be, in a year or two. But they are not going to be back at that level. They're just not. And they had a lot of things bounce their way to get, all 10, 11, 12, whatever, how many ever wins they got. But are they going to get all those bounces this year? Well, it's in my experience in football, it doesn't happen that way every year. They got a brand new offensive coordinator. So I think there's just so many changes on that team, and not for the better. And then there are so many changes on this team, and they're all for the better. And I think a lot of people are looking at CU, and all they can see is 111. And if that's all you can see, you need to shut your pie hole, because you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't done the homework to understand what is going to go on the field on this team. And I think there's a lot of people that just don't like Deion Sanders, and a lot of people, it's going to be his first time coaching at the Power 5 level. So what? Is there like something about the Power 5 level that the other team gets an extra thing that he doesn't get? It's football, man. There's 11 guys on the field. There's a difference in size and strength and speed of everybody, but for the most part, we're not going to be playing the top 10 in the country. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that what I've seen so far, some of these predictions of them scoring, look, they only hung 38 on us with the worst defense in the country last year. How are they going to get to 55 this year with a better defense from CU? I'm not trying to be buff-colored, black and gold glasses. I'm just trying to look at the reality of it. I just don't see how that could happen. How are you going to hang 55 on Travis Hunter, man? Explain it to me. I don't get it.
I love your rants. Yeah, I just tee it up and and you hit it 300 yards. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add there. I'd be surprised if this is not a close football game.
Yeah.
And I still haven't made my final prediction. It's tough to pick Colorado to win this game. It's going to be hot as hell down there. It's year two, even though they have so much changeover, there is some continuity there. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect going into this football game.
And it's hard to say, but I think one thing I see clearly, and again, it's, I don't have the time anymore to get up to Boulder and see what's going on there, even if they did let me in. But what comes through in these videos is, man, this is a team that wants it. This is a team that wants it real bad. And every one of those guys has a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. And they all like each other, and they all plan for each other. And, whether it's the military or football, the best organizations I've been around are the ones where everybody's there for each other, fighting for the guy next to you, playing for the guy next to you. And I see a lot of that. And I see, Man, I haven't seen since Bill McCartney a coach who could touch the heart of an issue and motivate like I've seen from Deion Sanders since he got to Boulder. I mean, some of those speeches, man, some of those like when he's before they go out to practice and they're in the team room and he's got the screen up there and a lot of times he's got a theme or whatever and you know uh and he calls them out like what do you want? What do you want from your life? What do you and sometimes it gets me, I mean, he talked about, with his foot surgery and said, I'm never going to dance in the end zone again. I'm never going to run like that again, but I got different goals now. I got different things to fight for. There's always, so I think there's an element to this team that people are underestimating. And, you know, let's take that defensive line. You don't think a defensive line is going to play with their hair on fire for Sal Sunseri? Well, if you don't, you're going to wind up with a size 12 foot in your backside. So, and I think, that offensive line, Bill O'Boyle's the kind of guy that you give that extra yard for, to try to be successful for that guy. So I do think that there's an element of that from this coaching staff that is different than we've seen for a long time. And, having been in Bill McCartney's program for more years than I can almost remember, it became sort of, well, I thought that's how every coach was, right? And they're not, and it makes a huge difference. And it's not just on game day. It's not just that you go out going nuts on game day. It's when you're down there in practice and it's 100 degrees, and you got a coach that can fire you up in a variety of ways. That's when you really make the progress, and I think that's going to make a huge difference here. So I kind of lost track of what the question was.
No, you're good. Well, you mentioned inspiring speeches, and that made me think of what Michael Irvin said to the team. And man, that gave me goosebumps. That was a hell of a speech. I don't know if you caught that, but
Oh, I didn't. What part of it? What did he say?
he talked about, the people that are doubting them, and also talked about the fact that what they're doing right now are going to create memories that they'll have for the rest of their lives. And he just said it so eloquently and with such a passion that you could see in the video. I think it was pretty much captured by well-off media and reached the people in the pregame show. And you could see the eyes of the players looking at him and just see them getting inspired by what he was saying. It was pretty cool.
Well, and I think that has a bigger impact than people really understand. You're talking about young men, and this is a game of passion, and it's a game of faith. Okay. Because if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in your team, you're not going to win. You're going to go out there. This is a combat, hand-to-hand combat sport. And when guys go out there, I can't speak to the psychology of it. That's not my specialty. But when guys believe, there's an extra something there. Okay. You're able to make that extra half an inch, to make that catch. You're able to make that extra move to get the sack, what have you. And every team for CU in the last 5-6 years, let's face it, man, they walked on the field knowing they were getting beat. They knew it. And that makes a huge difference. And this team doesn't believe they're going to get beat because their head coach doesn't believe they're going to get beat. And look at the guys he's brought in repeatedly day after day, these Hall of Fame guys, Terrell Owens and Michael Irvin and these guys, when you have these young men, that's their dream, is to be that guy. And your coach has brought that guy to stand there in front of you and tell you how to do it. Right. And so those guys want to live up to that. And they want to beat Terrell Owens and Michael Irvin and be that guy. So I think it makes a huge difference. It's not just, that 5 minutes of motivation. I think it makes a difference and it changes guys' lives.
Well, let's jump into the Buff Stampede mailbag, unless you have any other thoughts here as we close in on game one of the Coach Prime era.
No, I don't. I think your topic was thoughts on the Prime era. I guess I'm repeatedly and continuously blown away that this is happening to us, and I get a little bit emotional. And I think to myself, I thought this program was pretty much done at the end of last season. And I didn't know. Somebody said on the board, there was some thread about Bronco Mendenhall, and I don't, not necessarily to downplay Bronco Mendenhall or Rule or any of those other guys, but there is no other guy in America who could have turned this program around with such speed and with such, I don't know, such, I don't know, I can't think of the words, such an amazing, obvious. It's just so
Well, in terms
different.
of just bringing attention to the
Yeah.
University of Colorado, which you always hear the term, it's the front porch of the university. I don't think there's somebody that could have drawn as many eyeballs that is on this planet. Yeah,
Well,
to your point.
who could have brought these players? We just talked about every position.
Nick Saban, maybe it might be the only other person.
Right. Yeah. You know, that, I mean, somebody of that level, you know, Saban or Kirby Smart or somebody that like that would have been the guy. And, you know, we just went through all the positions, and every position has somebody that's going to potentially be a star. Nobody could have done that. And, you know, we would have still been a little bit, you know, when you're making incremental change, then you're talking 2 or 3 years down the road before you get to 6 wins, right? This ain't incremental change, brother. This ain't intramurals, brother. This is wholesale change for the better. And I'm almost, well, this is going to sound stupid, but I'm almost at a loss for words.
I don't think you are, William. You've had a lot of words already.
I used to use them all up. I'm at a loss now.
All right, fair enough. Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. All right, William, we're really going to dive right into the heart of the issues here with the first question. Movie Buff asked, does Lightning McQueen get health insurance or car insurance?
Well, is it time to start the season yet or what?
Yep. It's time. It's time.
I think he pretty clearly has to get car insurance. I don't know. You know, it's like he's still got pistons and parts and things like that. He doesn't go to a doctor, right?
That's true. My wife pointed out that there are no humans in this world, so maybe it's just insurance, right? I don't think you have to specify at that point.
Well, maybe you don't need insurance then if there's no humans.
But yeah, I'd love to see what a hospital looks like for Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
Is that like an oil change? You got to go in every 3,000 miles?
Yeah. And then I don't know, for some reason I started thinking that, what about Buzz Lightyear? But then I was like, oh, I guess he's human underneath all the stuff.
All right. We spent enough time on that. DHow888 asked, will the strength of the offense be the run game or the pass game?
Yes.
William, the fact that you have to pause and think about that, but also think that both groups are going to be pretty explosive.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool for Colorado fans going into the season to not realize which of those is going to be even better.
Well, and it leads you to a discussion, frankly, of Sean Lewis. Okay. And what I mean by that is his tendency prior to this year has been to be roughly 60% run versus pass. And there's no reason to go away from that this year, except that your wide receiver room is so ridiculous that why wouldn't you make that the strength of your game? But I think, you know, offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, after a while, they show who they are in their play calling. And so Sean Lewis, I think, is a run first kind of a guy. But I keep stopping and asking myself, has he ever had this kind of talent at every position before? What you know, it's like, you know, it's like
there's a reason that he came here from Kent State as a head coach, right?
Right. And it's like, I don't know, you know, I'm trying to think of analogies and I'll do the best I can, but I'm like, you know, my whole life I've mostly been driving regular, you know, Toyotas because I like Toyotas. And but what if somebody came and handed me the keys to the Lamborghini dealership and said, take whatever you want? I might walk in there and just look around and go, I can't pick, you know. because holy crap, look at this. I still think that this will be a run first offense, but I also think that Sean Lewis is a phenomenal offensive mind. And I think if our offense does what I expect it to do this year, I don't know if he'll be back next year, but because I think he's that level of offensive guy. And so I don't think he's going to let guys like Xavier Weaver and Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter and all these guys go to waste. Okay. But if your run game's working, you ride it. I mean, that's always been offensive line coach say that's always been my thing. If your run game is working, you go with it until it stops because that's how you wear teams down and that's how you dominate and control games, right? And the more your run game works, the easier it gets for those receivers because they start to creep guys up and trying to cheat safeties and what have you. But I would answer yes. I guess he didn't ask. He didn't list one. So I would say the run game will be the strength. It's sort of like how do I put it? The run game will be the strength, but the pass game will be the highlights. Although with
That's
Dylan,
that's a great way to put it. I think what you're trying to do, if you're Sean Lewis, is make them have to sell out, anticipating the
right,
run,
right,
and then they're going to take so many deep shots this year
and
with the talent they have.
that's why I think Hankerson or somebody like that or McCaskill is probably your lead back because you want to hammer, 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 right? And to make them start having to do that. But then you know what? If every time you hand off, Dylan Edwards goes 90 yards, I don't know. Maybe you're playing a second team by this second half. I don't know, but I still think that Sean, the basis of this offense is that run game and that direction and that sort of counter directional run game with pulling a lineman and what have you, and opening up those creases that way. Uh, so I do think that the run game will be the strength of the offense, but I don't think the passing game is going to be neglected with a quarterback and a set of wide receivers like we got. I think that people may be surprised to see the value we get from the tight end position when you have a coach that knows how to use it. Because at this point, if you're going to sell out to try to cover the receivers or the running backs, then Sean Lowe is the kind of guy that's got the brains to be able to figure out how to get the ball to the tight end and make you pay for it, even if our tight end is not great. So I would say, yeah, I would say the run game will be the majority, and the pass game will be what gets us on ESPN.
Just get Shedeur Sanders in some bubble wrap for the next 6 days. As
Yeah.
long as he is there healthy during warmups against TCU, this is going to be a really fun offense to watch.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that this is going to be the most fun Colorado offense to watch in a really long time. 2016 was so predicated on the defense making the big plays, and
Yeah.
it's going to be fun to watch an offense where you're not just praying they get a first down, but you're surprised when they don't get a first down.
Well, I have to admit, again, my tendencies and predilections is like watching that 2016 offense and, watching Philip Lindsay and watching Cepho Lufau off tackle. That was a lot of fun to me, man. And, and the heart that those two kids had, when there was no business getting the first down, I always felt like that Cepho and Philip would, one way or the other, man. They were going to get it. And that was a lot of fun to have that kind of confidence. I was always that year was always up behind the team way at the top of that section, and I was always sitting next to the families of some of the players, and it was just I never had any doubt that they were going to get that first down when they needed to get it, and so that was exciting to me, even though it's not exciting to everybody else, that 4 yards to get that first down. And I'll tell you this, I've coached enough defense over the years to know that kills the defense, man. When they keep getting that first down, it stabs the defense in the guts and they start to give up, which I think we saw a lot that year. So I don't know, there's so many weapons. I have to go back to the mid 90s to see the kind of weapons like we have on a CU team this year.
What was a more sure thing? Cepho Lufau, short yardage situation, keeping the ball, or
Yeah,
Laviska Chenault out of the Wildcat? They were both pretty automatic there.
yeah,
If you look
yeah,
at late in 2016 versus Laviska when they did that with him early,
yeah.
would that
Well,
have been 2018?
yeah, I think it was more effective in 2016. Like that Washington State game, I think there was like 6 or 7 straight plays where Cepho went off tackle and got 3 or 4 yards. And they couldn't stop it. You know,
All right, Philly Buff asked, should Deion have used the majority of the remaining scholarships for this year on G5/FCS or best available graduate level backups to fill out the remaining needs on the roster, specifically guys with 1 year of eligibility remaining who would have been gone after this season?
I'm going to
So
reject the
well,
okay.
let me just say real quick that in a perfect world, obviously you'd have 85 guys that came up from G5 to FCS to fill in some of those remaining gaps to compete and try to be a starter. But playing time is a currency, even in this NIL era. Guys are going to do their vetting and they're going to find out how likely it is for them to get on the field at a certain place. And you're talking about a guy with 1 year of eligibility remaining. He's not going to be a great locker room guy if he's not playing, right? So in a perfect world, yes, you'd have a bunch of guys that are Roderick Ward types that are just going to fill up depth at every position. But it's pretty hard to ask a coaching staff to figure out guys that are willing to do that. That's resources and time is a big resource is something that you can't waste. And so I feel like they did a pretty good job of trying to do that, but you're just not going to have in one off season any more than what they were able to accomplish from the transfer market, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that sort of leads into what I was going to say is I reject the premise of this question. This suggests that they didn't try to do that, which they did try to do that. But at the end of the day, like you said, you're not going to get a bunch of guys that come in here to clearly be backups. And I think they try to find guys to fill holes. But I don't think this coaching staff wanted warm bodies in the locker room, because very clearly the chemistry of the locker room and having the right mentality was more important than having warm bodies in the locker room. And I think what we're talking about in this question is, it was it just enough to have a warm body on the sideline? And this coaching staff didn't want that. People sort of seem to assume that, like way back at the beginning, like, we're going to fill all of our defensive tackle spots. Well, first of all, it assumes there's enough guys out there that want those positions. Well, everybody listed all the guys that were available. Great. All right. Well, now you got to get them to come here. And as good a recruiter as Deion and his coaching staff have proven to be, you don't win all the battles, man. And so I think they probably made some decisions. I think they had a lot of conversations in that war room and said, we're not taking that guy. We need a guy at that position, but we're not taking that guy because he's not good enough or he doesn't have the right mentality, And I think there's probably quite a few guys they wrote off, not for physical ability reasons, but because they didn't have it up here or in here the way that this coaching staff wants it. So I think they tried to do that to fill all those spots on the roster. And I don't think they found enough guys that would come here to do it.
There are a lot of really good walk-ons in this program too. When you
Yeah.
look at Charlie Offerdahl and Solomon in the defensive backfield, who'd you say?
Yelverton at tight end,
Yelverton at tight end. Even Michael Harrison. I almost said Mikey
right.
Harrison. Tim Brewster wouldn't like that.
Right. Yeah.
I know I'm missing a big one too.
Right.
There's some good walk-ons in this program. Slot receiver Caleb Mathis.
Yeah, right. Guys who were otherwise, scholarship guys who came here as walk-ons. Yelverton was the tight end who was injured and took a few years off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean that's a quality addition, right? And so I think a lot of people are looking at this like, well, why didn't Deion? I see this every now and then on the board. Why didn't Deion fill these spots with guys? Well, it's not a supermarket, man. You don't just get to pick them off the shelf and buy them. Well, I mean, okay, Georgia, if you
Georgia can, yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, some programs can do that, but we cannot. And more importantly, Deion doesn't want to. He made that very clear. We'll talk about that more in a minute. One of these questions, I think.
Duffster for real asked, player likely to surprise / blow up, rumor unit, you think outperforms expectations? This is a fun question. The first thing that popped in my head, William, was that there's a guy on this roster that people aren't talking a lot about that I think they will be in a few weeks, and that's Jacquez Robinson,
Oh yeah.
who I predicted to be their starting star. He
Yeah.
was banged up earlier in the preseason. Maybe that had a little bit to do with the fact that he just hasn't been talked about a lot, but a guy that's played corner, has played safety, was starting to come on at Alabama, starting to see an increased role. Obviously, Charles Kelly very knows his game intimately, recruited him over here. And I think he's got a guy that is going to be a big key to this defense here in 2023.
And I'm going to do this. Bless you, my son, Bishop. That's all I got to say. Bishop Thomas, man, that kid's going to blow this thing up in a big way. And on the other side of the ball, we've already started to see it, I think, and people are starting to grasp onto it. But I'll be real shocked if Jared Lichtenhand doesn't play his way into a high draft pick. Maybe not next year, but if he ain't one of the better left tackles in this conference and in the country, I'll be very surprised.
How much did the fact that Bishop Thomas was singing karaoke on the yoga mic to Backstreet Boys played into you wanting to bring that up?
How much do you think it played into it?
100%?
Exactly, man. How'd you know? You know me so well. I think Bishop Thomas is, people talk about the SEC defensive tackles, and here he is, man. I mean, he's just explosive and quick, and I'm trying to think back in the old days. He's Joel Steed, man. Except funnier than Joel was, but he's just got that extra. He got that thing, and he's going to make some linemen look really stupid. We haven't had a guy in the middle like him for a long time.
I think the motto of the show going forward needs to be BuffStampede Radio, where you come and get your dad jokes. What do you think?
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe we ought to go karaoke one of these times.
You do not want to hear me sing.
Oh, they don't want to hear me sing either, brother.
Dude, we were never better asked how many weeks before the offense gels and puts a complete game together. Same for the D.
I'll be shocked if that offense isn't clicking in game one.
Give me 2 or 3 drives for the offense. Defense,
right?
I don't know. I think I have a feeling that the defense is going to be kind of yo-yo this year. I think there's some really talented pieces there. And when it comes together, that's going to be a group that's going to be pretty darn good. But I mentioned run defense maybe is a concern of mine going into the season. I think there's going to be a few weeks where maybe that defense doesn't look as good as Colorado fans want. We'll see. I think week 2, if they could show up against Nebraska, at least gel in time for that would be obviously big.
I think this defense right from the start is going to be one where there's big plays and then there's big mistakes. And I think you're going to see you got guys on this defense who can make the spectacular, Sports Center of play of the week play. And then you're going to have guys miss assignments and guys not fit in the right place, right. So I think the defense is going to be both exciting and sometimes frustrating. But I would be surprised if that offense isn't clicking from game one. And part of that has to do again with Sean Lewis as a brilliant play caller, man. He's going to let him ease into it. He's going to open up the game with things that let Shedeur get confidence, let the receivers and everybody else in the offensive line get confidence. And he's not going to set them up for failure the way our recent offensive coordinators have. So I don't think you got to wait any time at all for that offense to gel. And I think if Bailey starts, I think having 2 guys that have played in this offense for the last 2 or 3 years is going to be a big part of that. 2 offensive linemen, I mean. Excuse me.
S2S Buff asked, what's the deal with Jawan Mitchell? Is he on the team? And he asked that question before Juju Mitchell was shown on Well Off Media practicing.
What's your name? I'm JJ Mitchell. That pretty much cleared that up. He looked good too, boy. That's what a big SEC linebacker looks like. Yeah.
Made plays at Texas, made plays at Tennessee, was going to probably be a starter at Arizona State. Talked back to a coach, and Kenny Dillingham is trying to set a standard there, just like Coach Prime is setting a standard here. You would think that Juju Mitchell would see at this point, this is kind of my last opportunity in terms of college football this year. So maybe don't do that again, but
Well, I would
Yeah,
guarantee, I would bet a paycheck that there was a one-on-one with him and Deion, and Deion
oh,
said,
yeah.
"This is how it is, and there is no margin. You will do things my way, or you will be gone." And if the kid has any kind of brains whatsoever, I think it's also different to hear that from a Hall of Famer. I think there's an element. I heard Dion on the field in practice one day last week say something like, "Hey, I don't know, you don't have to listen to me. It's not like I ever played this game or anything." There's an element of uh, respect, I think, that goes with him because of his ability to play the game as a head coach, and so we'll see. I think I'm sure that there was a meeting there, and that Juwan was told what the parameters are, and now it's up to him to do that or not. I don't think there's
Yeah.
going to be. I don't think this is going to be a team where players are allowed to get much leeway in that way.
If
I
you
don't
don't
think.
respect Coach Prime in
Right.
that sense, then you never saw any clips of the man play football. It was
Right. Right.
uh, you can count on your hands the number of athletes, at least for myself, talking for myself in my lifetime, that were true difference makers, and he's on a very short list when it
Yeah.
comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of defensive backs, Ronnie Loss, the only other guy that comes to my mind off the top of my head. But the other thing about Coach Prime was that it wasn't just talent; he was a hard-working guy and serious as a heart attack. And I think that's what still people miss about him. They think flash, flash, flash. This guy is deep and serious when it comes down to it.
Ugly Rat asked, how effective is the Buffs for Life collective at being an asset for CU in recruiting high-profile players? It is not much of an asset in terms of recruiting high-profile players. It has had a role with helping out some of maybe those lesser
Right.
known guys on the roster, but the high-profile players are getting the legit NIL deals, the Travis Hunters, the Shedeur Sanders. And, obviously there is not a collective at Colorado right now to have the backups at positions getting big money, but Bus for Life has at least tried to step up, and maybe it was a little bit late to the game in terms of getting that collective together. But I mean, pretty much everything else Rick George has done recently has been perfect. So
Yeah.
I think he's worked his way back into the good graces of Colorado fans, and rightfully so, based on early with the fundraising that he did, finally, getting on board with needing some of these transfer restrictions to change, and then landing Coach Prime. Coach Prime has made it very clear it was something about Rick George that sold him on Colorado. And if Rick George wasn't here, Deion Sanders wouldn't be the head coach at Colorado. There's no question about that.
And he's also been very clear that the guys that want the big NIL bucks is not the guys he wants. Now, maybe that's playing into reality, or maybe that's understanding that chemistry is as much a part of this particular team as talent. And I don't know, I would push back to some extent, and people call me naive if they want to, but I don't know that the NIL is as big as people think it is, and maybe at the top 5 or 10 level, perhaps
If
maybe
you're
those.
trying to be in the college football playoff, I think it does matter. Yeah.
It matters to some extent, but Travis Hunter didn't go anywhere because of NIL. He went because he had a relationship with a guy. Okay, and that still is a big part of this game, and a big part of recruiting. And some people want to make it about the money, and it's always been about relationships and that element of recruiting too. So I don't know that the NIL is as much as people think it is, but at where we are as a program right now, it's not the deciding factor. Now, if we get a 6 or 7 win season and we want to finish in the top 10 recruiting, maybe it becomes a factor. I don't know, but um, uh, I'm not sold on the idea that NIL is the be all and end all that some people think it is.
All right, let's go on to our next question here. And it is from Solomon's J. He asked, where do you anticipate this next high school class and transfer class will finish as far as rankings go? It's going to be tough from a high school ranking standpoint, in the sense that they're not going to take a big class. And so I'm trying to look it up right now. Yeah, Colorado is ranking a little lower in the Big 12 now. We got to talk about that in terms of the recruiting rankings looking for the future, but their average per commit is actually first in the Big 12 right now. So it's going to be more quality over quantity. And I'd anticipate them having a big transfer class again. And you do the combined class, I think it's going to look pretty good. It's going to be top 25, I would think.
Yeah, and depends really. I think a lot depends on how the season plays out. The recruiting line against Deion this year was it's not going to work. But if we go out and get 6 or 7 wins, all of a sudden that blows the lid off things, and maybe it ends up being a lot higher than we expect.
Yeah. All right. Scobuffs 80 asked, what will Coach Prime do if people rush the field in week 2? Extra security around him? It's actually a good question. They better have a plan for that.
Well, I mean, we beat Nebraska and it's going to be mayhem in there. I'm not sure they're quite anticipated that. I don't imagine they had that kind of mayhem at Jackson State, but I don't really know.
You'd probably want 20 security guys minimum, just focus on Coach Prime, just to be extra cautious, I would think.
Well, and I can recall back in the day, late 80s and early 90s and stuff, when we were that team, that they'd line the whole field at the end of the game with security and cops and what have you. I don't know that you can keep them from doing it. When a human wave's coming down, you're going to get the hell out of the way. But
I don't know if that's possible at Folsom Field.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you're going to have to really dedicate a lot of resources into preventing that. And they just rushed the field against Cal last year. Maybe you beat Nebraska, you welcome the fans down on the field. That probably would be the right call.
Right. And I think that, and I don't think there's a danger. I don't see that there's a danger to Deion Sanders. I'm not sure there's anybody out to get him, but
there's more of a danger. Sorry to cut you off. I think there's more of a danger if you try to keep people from coming down on the field, honestly.
Right. Then people get mad or whatever. But yeah, if you just let them down and so there's not pushing and shoving, then it's orderly, and I don't see a problem with it. We've had the crowd down on the field before, and hasn't ever been a problem. And I think Prime would welcome that. I mean, I think he's a guy that thrives off the fans and the energy and what have you. And
you got to be smart about it, though.
Yeah,
it takes one person to be an idiot to do something they shouldn't. I don't know. I would err on the side of caution when it comes to that. But yeah,
but like you said, there's you got 50,000 people plus in there. You're kind of limited in what you can do.
Yeah. And the people rushing the field, especially at Folsom and down on the south end zone. I mean, they have momentum on their side too. I would not want to be a security guy trying to keep people from getting on that field.
No. You're going to get somebody killed.
Scobuffs 71085 asked, how do you feel about avocado toast?
I didn't realize we had more than one Scobuffs, but look, there it is. You learn things, see?
Do you want to lead off here?
Well, yeah, quite frankly, to me, avocado and guacamole is like eating snot, so I don't eat it. But hey, knock yourself out if you like it. I don't think it's a testament to your manhood one way or the other. If I liked it, I'd eat it and be proud of it. But I don't like avocado. I think it's nasty.
Okay. Even guacamole. Guacamole is delicious. I don't like that take.
The mouthfeel of it, I don't know. It just grows to me. It's like I said, it feels like mucus. So I'm not an avocado guy. If you are, good for you. Doesn't make you less of a man in my view. But knock yourself out. Trout Buff, you go, brother. I have you with your avocado toast.
Well, Coach Prime is a big sponsor for avocado, in case that matters at all. I'm pretty neutral on it. Our youngest, she loves avocado toast, so I'll go pro on that. AZ History Buff 13 asked, do snakes have long necks and short tails, or long tails and short necks?
I don't think they got either one.
Before we get into this, so the whole ecosystem would just fall apart if snakes disappeared, right?
Well, that's I always thought that was funny. People think the humans are so important. It's like, you take humans off the planet, everything gets better. You take bacteria and mold and snakes and insects off the planet, everything comes to a crashing halt. So there you go.
Okay.
That being
Well,
said,
I have a deep rooted hatred for snakes, and
oh, really?
it's not really rational. But I'm a runner when I'm not hobbling around in a walking boot like I am right now because of my Achilles. But I have had the jump out of my skin moments with snakes that look like twigs, and then you get up close on them instead of
Yeah.
like you have a choice to either step on them or jump out of your skin, and so that's part of it. And the way they move creeps me the heck out. Like I can't do it.
You would have been hanging out with Chad Brown and his whole warehouse of snakes.
I would know where Chad Brown lives, and I would make sure that I'm in a different zip code from Chad Brown.
When I was in the Navy, I worked on F-14s at Miramar, and the flight deck would get, or the runway was get really hot, and it would maintain heat during the night. And then you come out in the morning, one unusual to find snakes coiled around the front nose gear of the airplanes, and there were always big rattlesnakes. We'd always go out there and like, all right, who's gonna chop his head off? I guess I'm gonna get me in trouble with PETA, but
I would have been in the front row cheering you guys on. Seriously, I wish I could change that, but that's like everybody's got their thing, right? The one thing that they have fear over or that just grosses them out. That's it for me.
So you're Indiana Jones. Why has it got to be snakes?
Yeah, exactly. I laugh. My wife and I are doing a project where we watch the AFI's top 100 movie list, and Raiders of the Lost Ark was on there recently, and
Yeah,
I laughed louder than I should have at that line.
yeah. Why has it got to be snakes?
Movie Buff did respond to this question, and I don't know how we're gonna come up with a better answer here. He said, if you look at the anatomy, technically, both are short, with the body / abdomen taking up the majority of the animal. So we've even got the semi-scientific take on this, I think.
So I'm noticing that we started the mailbag with Movie Buff asking about Lightning McQueen, and we're finishing the mailbag with Movie Buff talking about the anatomy of snakes.
Yeah.
Movie Buff, I'm a little concerned about you, man.
Like you said, and we feel that we have to have some football games to talk about. And fortunately, we do. It's coming up on Saturday in Fort Worth, Texas, against the Horned Frogs. William, the next time we talk on this podcast, we're going to have a lot to talk about.
We're not going to put each other on the spot, or we're going to make a prediction.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm not. I was hoping you. I'm not sure I'm ready. Oh my goodness.
Put me down for 6-6.
As for the season, or
yeah,
I think yeah, I think I would say 6-6 with a hopeful for more. I think we win game one. I think honest to God, we come out of the chutes 3-0, but we'll see how it goes.
Wow. Okay. Do you think you're going to predict a win for the opener?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm not going to go. I don't know what to say for score. I think it'll be a lot of points scored. But
if you can't tell, I'm going to kind of try to avoid this as much as possible because no matter what you say, you're going to have a lot of people coming at you.
Right. And people seem to be keeping receipts these days. And so whatever.
I have no idea. Like, this is going to be the hardest season opener to project.
Right.
But gosh, I will be really surprised if Colorado gets blown out. I just don't see that happening.
Right. If it's not competitive right down. I would be more, I would not be as surprised by CU blowing them out as them blowing us out, quite frankly. I don't think that'll happen, but I think it'll be competitive down at the end, but I think we got more weapons than they do.
All right, William, unless you have anything else you want to add, I say let's end this show and venture into that season opener with some optimism and hope, and then come back and share our thoughts on what we saw.
Yeah, what do they say in the movies? And scene.
And thanks to everybody out there, as always, for tuning in.